So it turns out I really didn't like any of the YouTube videos I found on how to solve these. So here I am making a video. This is a 7x7 kenken, which means that the numbers are going to be 1 through 7. And there's a lot of strategies on these bigger kenkens that you don't have to use on the smaller kenken. So let's talk about some of them. First of all, you fill in the obvious. The first thing I look for is 7x7. So it's the numbers 1 through 7. So if you subtract 7 from 1, you get 6. That's the only way you can get 6 minus. So you know that this has to be 1 and 7. There's no other way you can get that. So I've filled in all the 6 minus boxes. Very similar, we have 13 plus. The only way to get the add to 13 from two numbers between 1 and 7 is to have 6 and 7. So that's what has to be in the 13 plus box. The next thing to look for is numbers that multiply to interesting numbers. So here we have two numbers that multiply to 10. Well, that has to be 2 and 5. There's nothing else it can be. So let's look at this one. We're three numbers that multiply to 90. We can't use a 10. We don't have one. So it has to be a 5. And the other two numbers have to multiply to 18, if that makes sense. So if we divide 5 from 90, we get 18. So we only have 2 boxes left because one of them has to be a 5. So we could do 2 and 9, but we don't have a 9. So it has to be 5, 3, and 6. That's what has to be in these 3 boxes. I don't see anything else jumping out to me as being really obvious here. So what I like to do from this point is work in rows and columns and see what columns or rows I have almost filled in. So in this column, I only have 2 boxes left. I know that the 1 has to be in this cell, and I know that the 7 has to be in this cell. Same thing here for 3, 5, and 6. So the only numbers I don't know where they go are 2 and 4. So the 2 and 4 have to be in these 2 boxes. So since we know that 2 and 4 are in those 2 boxes and we're trying to multiply to 120, well, 2 times 4 is going to be 8. So we're multiplying 2 times 4, you get 8. In order to get to 120, we're going to need a 5, right? Because that's the only thing we have here. So in this column, somewhere is going to have to be a 5. And then what else are we going to need? We have an 8 and a 5, so that's 40, and then we also need a 3. So in this column is going to have to be 3 and 5. So here's where we can use a little extra logic. We know that the 5 in the second column has to be used to make the 90. We know the 5 in the top row has to be used to make the 10. So you can't actually have a 5 here. You can't have a 5 here. And you can't have a 5 here. So the 5 here has to be in that cell, and then we know that the other one is a 3. So that gives us some more information for the rest of this column. We need 2 numbers that subtract to a 3. Well, we only have 2 possibilities left. You can see the 6 and 7 are used up here, the 5 is used up here, so this has to be 4 and 1. So we've done a couple columns, so let's look back at a couple rows. We have to have the 5 in this box, but we also have to have the 2 in that box. So we can't have a 2 here because it has to be in one of these 2 boxes. So this has to be a 4. This has to be a 2. And then in the rest of this row, we don't know where the 1 is, so this could be a 1. It can't be a 2, 3, 4, or 5, so it has to be 6 or 7. So if you look, we need 2 numbers that subtract and get 1. Well, with the number 1, that's not going to be anything. So it has to be 6 and 7 up here. We don't know which ones, but we know that these 2 boxes, 6 and 7, has to be there. And then that gives us 1 for here, and that has to be 7 there. So let's look at the second row here. Here we have 2 numbers that add to 7. It could be 1 and 6. So that's a possibility. Or it could be 3 and 4. Which one is that? We're going to look into that in just a second.